And just like that, Jagmeet sells out to the Liberals. It is exactly what we all expected. We know the allegations that he's wanting to just stick around for his pension. In the interview that he answered the questions in today, I think it was more evident than ever that he is not looking out for what is best with Canadians. He is supporting Trudeau, and he is supporting Trudeau's nonsense policies, and we are ending up worse for wear as a result. We have a big video today. I have a bunch of updates on some other stories I've talked about recently, some updates on what's happening with the grocery stores and some of the theft issues there as well. And then the Speaker of the House is being asked to step down after his nonsense actions with kicking Pierre out of the House when the Conservatives left in support, because it was a brutal move to see. Let's get into today's video. We got a lot of exciting stuff. We are eliminating a lot of these self-checkouts because one, theft, and two, people just don't like it. Comment down below, do you guys prefer the self-checkout or do you like to work with a cashier? I personally almost always go to a cashier line. I like the interaction, and I don't like scanning my own groceries. Let's get into it.
The all self-checkout cashierless store, once seen as the future, is now in question. Walmart recently ditched self-checkout at 6 U.S. locations.
Different animal?
At least 6 Canadian Tires in Ontario have done the same. This giant Tiger discount store, also in Ontario, pulled all its self-checkouts just 2 weeks ago.
I thought it was great. I like the person-to-person contact. You can't say to a machine, have a good day.
Giant Tiger says it scrapped self-checkout here because many customers didn't like it. But some experts say it's often the added costs that are making retailers backtrack.
Stores anticipated that this technology would allow them to significantly reduce labor costs. And what they found was that actually they couldn't eliminate a lot of the cashiers because they needed the cashiers there in part to deter shoplifting and theft.
Yeah, people were stealing, and the funny thing is Walmart tried to do like a paid membership program to use their self-checkouts. Everybody was like, no way. They shut it down, and they're like, all right, people are stealing. We got to just go back to cashiers.
Retail Council of Canada says some of the culprits are organized gangs of thieves who neglect to scan pricey items while unattended at self-checkout.
It could very well be 3 very expensive bottles of face cream. It could be specialized baby formula. And they target merchandise that they know has high value on the street.
Why am I under arrest?
Some retailers don't like to talk about self-checkout theft. But U.S. discount chain Dollar General and Walmart recently admitted they're pulling self-checkouts from selected stores due to theft.
There are a few stores where we've made the decision that they'll come out of. Retail shrinkage is a cost, so we want to make sure that the checkout process is accurate.
Let's get into this Jagmeet story. I think this is the most frustrating out of all of them. The answers he gives just shows he does not care. Before we get into that, I'm a real estate agent in Ontario. If you want to work with me or my team across Canada, reach out to me in the link below. We'll hand select somebody for your area. But let's get into Jagmeet's nonsense.
The leader of the NDP is here live in studio now to talk more about that. Hi, Mr. Singh. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I appreciate you making the time. Why did you wait 2 weeks to say you support the budget when nothing tangibly changed in the interim?
Well, first off, we wanted to show that we were serious about looking at the budget to make sure what we had fought for was actually there. We want to confirm the things that we secured in the budget, like the school food program, the pharmacare, the dental care, and diabetes medication and device coverage, as well as the Renters Protection Fund. So when we were briefed about it, when we read it, we wanted to make sure that what we had fought for was actually showing up in
We wanted to make sure more spending was there.
the budget, and we were confident that that's there. Then we were concerned about certain things, and I raised those concerns, the disability benefit not being enough. And really, that clawbacks were particularly concerning to us. It could put a person living with disabilities in a worse off position, potentially, and that's completely wrong. And I raised that with the Prime Minister directly, and I said, this is wrong, and this can't happen. And there was an openness to addressing those concerns. In addition, I raised concerns about the Jordan's principle not being met. And that's another area where I'm really concerned about. The federal government made a commitment that if an Indigenous child needs care, that the care should be delivered first, jurisdiction worked out afterwards. Well, the federal government's missing that requirement almost 70% of the time, which is a very serious concern. So I raised that with the Prime Minister, and I heard some openness to addressing that. After hearing those concerns being addressed, or an openness to addressing them, I've said now we are prepared to support.
So your support
What he did is he chose a couple of feel-good topics that would give him some coverage to be like, oh, but look at these nice things that he's fighting for, but they're not actual impacts to Canada as a whole. And remember, he's a federal leader. So like he needs to be looking at Canada as the whole. I do think, people on disability need to be taken care of. Of course, that's something that needs to be part of the system. There are federal problems that we have, and none of which you fought for in the budget.
Your support is essentially contingent on an openness from the government. Like, there are lots of things the government has appeared open to, which it has not followed through on. Particularly, let's take the example of the disability benefit. It is horrifyingly low, according to advocates, right? $200 a month. When they set expectations that it would bring people out of poverty, how can you support a budget that does?
Can't bring people out of poverty by the government giving them constant money. We all know it has to be paid for. It's going to be worse. Spending more and more, it's going to make things worse. That's more money in the system.
That just because the Prime Minister sounds open to addressing a concern.
Well, let's be clear. We agree that with the advocates, if this was an NDP government, we wouldn't allow for this to happen. We would never done this. This is what the Liberals have done. And we are going to continue to attack them, put pressure on them to improve this. We're
going to continue to attack them, but we will not vote them out.
Not shown a willingness to improve the amount, and we think they're wrong. And so we'll continue to mount pressure on them. We'll continue to raise our concerns. We'll continue to fight back. Often with this government, what we've seen? Well, often what we've seen is right now, dental care is a great example. It's being rolled out right now. There were many times on this journey where the Liberals said no. They voted against it twice in the past. They said it couldn't happen. They couldn't deliver it. Now seniors are receiving this care. This is testament to New Democrats persevering, fighting for people, and delivering. Similarly,
the dentists aren't signing up for that program. There's been a bunch of stories about it. Nobody wants to be part of it.
With the disability benefit, we fought for that. No, the Liberals have failed. They haven't delivered what was expected. Like you put it, the advocates have said this is not what we wanted. And on top of that, the advocates said their criteria in terms of eligibility said, please, at a minimum, don't make it based on the disability tax credit. And that's exactly what the Liberals did. So we're concerned about that. We think that's a big problem. And we've addressed that. I've raised that directly with the Prime Minister, and I expect to see solutions.
But you have something available to you that few others do. You have the power to actually sway the vote. The Conservatives and the Bloc were going to vote against. If you added your party's votes to that, the budget would be defeated, the government would go down. And that would be in parallel to how you describe this government. You have said Justin Trudeau is a failed leader who is bad for Canada, and yet you're not willing to actually vote in that manner. You are keeping them in power despite your concerns, despite saying something like that.
Well, the facts are...
He's such a coward. Like, Justin Trudeau has failed Canada. He's not here for... Like, he says these things, like, and this is where the allegations come that he's just fighting for his pension, because it's like, you have all of this supposed distrust and Trudeau's failing, but you'll do anything to keep him in power, keep supporting his decisions, keep doing all this while you're saying, so he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's like the worst example of a coward sellout politician ever. Oh, here's these feel-good topics. I hate Trudeau, but I'm going to keep him in power because I need my pension. Allegedly.
Canadians chose him as Prime Minister. What we're doing is using our power to get the most we can for people. And if we voted against the budget, it would be voting against free birth control for women, free diabetes medication and devices.
Should we be paying for free birth control for women? Why would that be government money that we're spending on that? I don't know.
The child care, the dental care, the Renters Protection Fund, the protection for kids or the support for kids in school to get a nutritious meal. Those are things that we're going to support. We fought for those. We want those to move forward. Pierre Poilievre is against those things.
All of your spending makes parents not be able to afford their groceries because you're creating more money in the system. You're causing inflation. I want kids to not go to school hungry, but I don't want it to be because we keep making the problems worse.
Said right off the top, he would be removing the dental care program for seniors, despite having dental care paid for with a publicly funded program for most of his adult life. He would take away the diabetes medication and the devices coverage, which we know is not only going to improve the life of people, save them money, but improve our healthcare system. So that's the difference between us and the Conservatives. We want this to move ahead. But we've raised some concerns, and we're going to fight to make sure that those are addressed.
But how do you reconcile telling Canadians on one hand, Justin Trudeau is a failed leader? That's your words. A failed leader who is bad for Canada. And on the other hand, essentially just telling them right now, Pierre Poilievre, I think would be worse, so I'm going to just support the budget and not make sure that they get toppled.
Well, it's not. That's not the frame at all. What I'm putting forward is that on their own, the Liberals would have done none of this. They wouldn't have done these things. They are absolutely failed in terms of what they've achieved in the past number of years. We have forced them to do in 2 years significant things for people. The pharmacare, the childcare legislation, the dental care. These are things we forced them to do. If we were not there, they wouldn't have done them. And
The guy sucks. Shout out to Vassie, though, the interviewer here, because she actually asked a couple tough questions, being like, "Hey, how do you rectify that? You're basically lying." Like she didn't call him a liar, but she said some pretty interesting stuff. Next story is the calls for the Speaker of the House to be removed. Either he steps down himself or they, appoint somebody else. And I don't think anybody wanted to see that level of censorship in the House. Let's see what they have to say.
Well, the water cooler topic today calls for the resignation of House Speaker Greg Fergus. He is facing questions about his future after he scolded the Conservative leader during question period yesterday and sent Pierre Poilievre packing. High drama over what Fergus called unparliamentary behavior. CTV's Michael Couture is here. And Mike, what's been happening since yesterday's big exit?
Sandy, there were no expulsions or walkouts, and the ramped-up rhetoric we saw yesterday gave way to a debate on the decriminalization of illicit drugs.
Will he announce now that his experiment with legalizing hard drugs in BC is over? Yes or no?
Pierre Poilievre kicked off question period asking for action on BC's opioid crisis, which just yesterday the Conservative leader called wacko. That level of discourse surprising to some, considering how things went yesterday.
When will we put an end to this wacko policy by this wacko Prime Minister?
After the Speaker expelled Poilievre, his caucus called for Greg Fergus to be removed.
Should resign. He's a disgrace.
I never did have confidence in this speaker.
CTV News caught up with Greg Fergus, but he refused to address questions about his future.
Can't respond. It might be unfair for the speaker to comment on things that happen in the House.
Do you regret how things played out yesterday?
His office later said he has no intention of stepping down. Liberals put the blame on the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre.
Canadians expect us to work, to deliver for them, and not to act as children, and the leader of the opposition needs to stop acting as a child.
That's a hilarious statement when Trudeau is quite possibly the most childish prime minister we've ever had. I don't know. His behavior is just absolutely hilarious when it comes to answering questions, being accountable, taking any level of responsibility. He's hilarious when it comes to that stuff. But anyways, I am a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me if you want to work with my team here or anywhere across Canada. We can hand select somebody for your area. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.